You can go, yeah.
4:15, they're cutting it even closer at 4:15. Jesus.
Hello?
You're on time, you're late.
Hi, you there? Yes, they've just arrived. They mistook the times, but they're there now. Okay. All right, thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Oh, that's freaky, eh?
Let's figure it out.
It's awesome the way they do that.
Oh my God, yeah.
Turn the corner, the way you turn the corner.
Okay, so welcome back to the bus. Yeah, I always don't like leaving people. Sometimes we have to leave people. It goes on for too long, but it's all right. It worked out well today, so super. Okay, so we're heading back to the ship. Should take us about 35 minutes to get back. Did you get to see the gardens?
Yeah.
Yes. Get a bit of an overview of the gardens. Yes, yes.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, you need a whole day at Širom really to see everything.
Just gardens.
But in the morning or afternoon, you can get a bit of an overview. So that's nothing. Okay. So would you like to live at Širom?
No.
No, you don't like it. No. Well, it is possible because there are several hundred apartments at Širom. The former domestic quarters have been, some of them have been converted into flats, and small flats, yeah, because they're former domestic servants' quarters, so 1 to 2 people, not families. But you can live there. The only problem is there's a bit of a waiting list. Apparently, if you put your name on the list, then your grandchildren might get a chance.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not expensive though. But I saw actually a couple of months ago. I actually saw an advert for a flat at Širom, which I've never seen before. I had a look at it. It was 55 square meter flat. I think I don't know if you do. I think feet is 3 times that, isn't it, or something? Anyway, but anyway, 55 square meter flat, and it was €800, which is not particularly expensive. So the flats are not particularly expensive, but they're very difficult to get hold of. I believe some of them are quite nice because they're actually in the outbuildings and gardens. So, but of course, there's not a lot of disadvantages maybe to living at Širom. That's the orangery on the right-hand side. This, after the Versailles, that's the second longest orangery in Europe. So that's where the plants are brought during the cold winter months. It's heated. That's where they used to hold concerts as well, as it was in the winter. It was heated. Anyway, I must introduce myself for the group who Carl had to shoot off. So my name's Martin. I'm taking over, say, from Carl just for this short journey back to the ship. Now, would you like to hear a story maybe about the crown jewels?
Yes.
The crown jewels of Austria, which is connected with Širom. Because you were probably told by Carl. I assume you were told by Carl in the blue Chinese salon. Carl, the last emperor. 1918, 11th of November 1918, he had to sit down at that desk in the blue Chinese salon, sign papers, ending the Habsburg dynasty. 640 years of Habsburg dynasty ended when he signed those papers. And imagine what that was like. Yeah, you imagine you're head of a family who's been in power for 640 years. You know you're going to have to sit down at a desk, sign a piece of paper, and then you lose everything. You lose all your power, you lose all your influence, you lose your property, you lose your money, you lose everything. Imagine what that must have been like. So it must have been a very difficult step. And that's what happened in the blue Chinese salon on the 11th of November 1918. Something 10 days before that, something really unusual happened at the Imperial Treasury. The Imperial Treasury is in the Hofburg. So you might have gone past that this morning. But the Imperial Treasury holds some of the most valuable artifacts from the Habsburg dynasty, and in November 1918, it held the crown jewels. It was one of the biggest collections of crown jewels in Europe because they've been collected over 600 years, and it was kept at the Imperial Treasury. Now, on the 1st of November, 10 days before Karl hands over power, something really strange happens at the Imperial Treasury in the last days of the First World War. A car pulls up outside, a man gets out. His name is Count Berchtold. He's actually the leading servant leading member of staff of Karl's court. Now this Count Berchtold goes to the back of the car, boot of the car, opens up the boot, takes out 2 suitcases. Another car pulls up at the same time, another man gets out. This is the chief of Vienna police. He's been made the chief of Vienna police on that very same day by Karl, who's still emperor. Anyway, the Count Bechtold takes the two suitcases into the Imperial Treasury, followed at a discreet distance by the Chief of Vienna Police. He goes to the cabinets in the Imperial Treasury where the crown jewels are kept. He has the keys. He opens the cabinets and he begins to take all the jewels out and put them into the suitcases watched by the Chief of Vienna Police. Now, he doesn't take the crown. He doesn't take the orb or the scepter, these three very important parts of the crown jewels. Why? Well, possibly because they're very big, they're very bulky, difficult to hide. Also possibly because if there's ever to be another coronation of another emperor, another Habsburg, they would need them for the coronation. But he takes everything else. He takes the tiaras, he takes the rings, the bracelets, the necklaces, the brooches, all goes into the suitcases. He also takes the Florentine diamond. Now the Florentine diamond is one of the biggest diamonds in the world. It was given to Maria Theresa by Franz Stephan on their wedding in 1736. And therefore it's one of the most valuable diamonds in the world. That also goes into the suitcases. Then Count Bechtold shuts the suitcases, leaves the Imperial Treasury, followed a distance by the Chief of Vienna Police, puts the suitcases in the car and drives off. And the crown jewels were never seen in Austria again. So what happened to them? Yeah, that's the question. These were very chaotic days. This was the end of the First World War. Everything was falling apart. 600 years of rule was collapsing around them. So lots of chaos going on. All we know is that on the 5th of November, 4 days after that event, Count Bechtold leaves the country. He takes the overnight train from Vienna to Switzerland, to Zurich, and it's believed he has the jewels with him. Now the government at the time, the new government, when they find out what happened at the Imperial Treasury, they contact Karl. He's still emperor, and they say to Karl, look, those crown jewels, they belong to the new Austrian state. They don't belong to your family, they belong to the Austrian state, so please bring them back. Now Karl doesn't deny that he's taken them. He's still emperor, and he says, look, I think everything's going to collapse into even more chaos. When it does, the Bolsheviks will come to power, and when they come to power, they will steal everything. And so for that reason, I've taken the crown jewels and I'll keep them safe. And when things settle down, I bring them back. And that was the story he told them anyway. 11th of November, he sits down, Armistice Day, in that room at the Schönbrunn, signs away his power. The family leave to Castle Eckartsau, which is outside the city. They sit in Castle Eckartsau until March 1919, and then overnight they leave the country. They drive to Switzerland, to Zurich. Karl will never return to the country. Now, when the government hears that the Habsburgs have left the country, they get a bit worried because they're now outside their jurisdiction. They know they've got the crown jewels, but they're now outside their jurisdiction. So what do the Austrian government do? They contact the Swiss government and they say to the Swiss government, look, the Habsburgs have stolen the crown jewels. You must extradite them back to Austria. And what do the Swiss government say? No, they're not interested. This is a private affair. I'm afraid we're not going to do anything now. So what do the Austrian government do? Well, they contact Karl. He's no longer emperor. He's living in Zurich with his family, and they say to Karl, look, these are the crown jewels. These are the Austrian crown jewels. They belong to the country. You must bring them back. This is theft. This time, Karl changes his story. He says he would love to bring them back. He really would. Unfortunately, something really bad has happened. Someone's stolen them from him. And that was the story he told the Austrian government. And the Austrian government couldn't do much about it. They had no jurisdiction over the Habsburgs. They were in Switzerland. They couldn't prove it was not true. It was possibly true. And they couldn't do anything about it. 1921, though, 2 years later, the Habsburgs are forced to go into exile on Madeira, out in the Atlantic Ocean, the island belonging to Portugal. And the following year, Karl dies on the island. He's only 35 years old. He's the last emperor. He's buried on the island of Madeira. He's not buried in the Imperial Crypt in Vienna. He's buried on Madeira. His wife, Sita, the last empress, brings the family, 8 children, back to Europe. They go to New York, they go to Canada, before returning to Europe again. And whatever happened to the crown jewels disappears into history. We don't know whatever happened to those. Until 1966, 44 years after Karl's death, something happens which begins to bring a bit of clarity into what actually did happen to the crown jewels in 1921. What happened was actually quite unusual. It was a jeweller in Zurich whose name was Sontheimer. He published his memoirs. It was 1966, he was about to retire, and before he retired he thought he'd publish his memoirs. Now normally no one would be interested in the memoirs of a jeweller in Zurich, but Sontheimer was quite an interesting character. He had an interesting speciality. His speciality was he would break jewels out and sell them. So if you had a necklace, for instance, you'd take them to Sontheimer, Sondheimer wouldn't sell the necklace, he would break out the individual jewels and sell them separately. Now why would you do this? Because the necklace was always worth more than the individual jewels. Well, if you couldn't sell this necklace for whatever reason, it was a way of getting some money for the jewels themselves. And that was Sondheimer's speciality, that's what he did. He writes in his memoirs something which even for him was unusual. 1921 in Zurich, the Habsburg family is still living in Zurich at that time. He's in his workshop. Someone knocks on the door of his workshop, he goes to the door, he opens the door, a man is standing there. He's never seen this man before. The man says, I've got the Austrian crown jewels, could you break them out and sell them, all of them, for me? Now Sondheimer, this was even for Sondheimer an unusual request, so he said, I need a couple of days to think about it. And in those couple of days he did some research. He wanted to find out who this man was. He found out that it was one of the closest friends of Karl, the former emperor, living in Zurich with his family. And when he finds out this is a friend of the family, he thinks, okay, this must be okay, I'll do what he says. And so he said, bring me the jewels, I'll break them out and I will sell them for you. And that's what he did. In the book, in his memoirs, he doesn't write out about how much money he was paid for these jewels, except for one figure. The opals, just the opals, was sold to Cartier, the jewelers in Paris, and Cartier paid in 1918, this was 1918, they paid, 1919, so they paid 1 million francs just for the opals. Then you can add the pearls, you can add the emeralds, the sapphires, the rubies, the diamonds, and then the Florentine diamond. Sondheimer was said he was given the diamond and told to cut it into 3 pieces and sell it separately. Now this was a bit of cultural vandalism because of course it was one of the biggest in the world, so it was really a very important diamond. But Sondheimer did what he was told, cut it into 3 pieces, sold it separately, but doesn't say in his book who he sold it to. And that was a story Sondheimer writes in his memoirs in 1966. Now when this came out, it caused quite a sensation, especially in this part of the world, because everyone wanted to know what happened to these crown jewels. And so journalists contacted Zita. Karl was long dead in 1922, but Zita was still very much alive, the last empress. And they said to Zita, look, do you want to change the story? Your husband said in Zurich that the jewels have been stolen from him after what we read in the memoirs. She said, no, that's exactly what happened. The jewels were stolen from us, and if this so-called friend did what he said he'd done, he wasn't working for us. And again, that seemed to be the end of the story. You couldn't prove that wasn't true, and that seemed to be a rather unsatisfactory end to the story once more. Except for one more piece of information came out which clarified what exactly had happened. A journalist also did some more research into Sondheimer's life, the jewelers, and found out that in 1921 something really unusual happened to Sondheimer. He was in Switzerland, and someone turned him into, made him an aristocrat, gave him a life peerage. Now that didn't happen in Switzerland, and who did it? Well, Karl, the last Habsburg emperor. So it became clear with that last piece of information that what really had happened, the Habsburgs had stolen the jewels. They said they just claimed them, they were their jewels to start with, but other people think this was theft. And to try and buy the silence of Sondheimer, who sold all the jewels, Karl had made him a life peer, an aristocrat for life. But of course, 44 years later, when you're about to publish your memoirs, you're about to retire, you've got a really good story, Sondheimer couldn't resist putting it in his book. And that's why today we know what happened to the crown jewels. They suffered the same fate as the Habsburgs themselves. They dispersed and scattered all over the world, and nobody knows exactly where. And just one postscript to that story, because in 1921 the Austrian government sued the Habsburgs in Zurich just before they were sent into exile on Madeira, and the government of Austria said to the Habsburgs, if you don't bring the jewels back, you must pay $20 million. Now this was 100 years ago. If you transfer $20 million, which was obviously seen to be the value of the diamond of the jewels, if you translate that into today's money, on the 1st of November 1918, the Habsburgs took $433 million of jewels from the imperial treasury, and that money would have been paid to pay for the future of their family. And that was what happened to the crown jewels. Yes, please, yes.
How come Karl died so young, 35 years old?
Well, I mean, he was the last emperor. The whole thing must have been a complete shock. He was sent into exile. It must have affected his health, probably. He was very young. We don't know what he died of. Some kind of, it wasn't TB, it was something like that, but some kind of breathing problems. Yeah. it's possible that the whole stress of being the last emperor, the whole stress of losing everything and being expelled and forced into exile was probably too much for him. That's the belief anyway. Yeah, he was very young, 35 years old. So here on the left is the Nationalmarkt. This is the oldest and largest food and vegetable market in Vienna. Not open today, but very popular with local people and visitors as well. Have a look at the succession now, you get the best view of the succession there on the left, the gold dome. This Art Nouveau building we saw, yeah, we saw it earlier as well, but that was the best view.
I never didn't get to see it last time. Just got to yeah. It's cool. Very pretty.
Football.
They didn't like it.
That's what I noticed the other day when we were driving around on that little train in Denver. They had a sporting goods store and they actually had football.
6 o'clock. And her court talks.
Coming up on the right is a church you would have seen this morning, but you get a better view of it. This is the church, St. Charles Church, built by Johann Bernhard Fischer von Erlach, who built Schönbrunn. It's nice and interesting now. But have a look now. You get a better view of it now. There's this huge Baroque church, St. Charles Church, on the right hand side. And on the left, another building you would have seen this morning, but now you get a better view of it. Coming up on the right, the red building, this is the music Verein. This is the headquarters of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. That's where the New Year's concert was broadcast. You would have seen this morning probably, but you get a better view of it now, a bit more time to see it. The New Year's concert, 2,000 tickets. 5 million people apply for those tickets.
Vienna Boys Choir sing there?
No, the Vienna Boys Choir have their own concert hall in the second district, actually quite near the ship. You may have heard of the Outgarten Palace. In the Outgarten near the ship is where the Vienna Boys Choir live. Their boarding school is. That's where their concert hall is as well. But they would be guests at the Music Verein for certain concerts, but their concert hall is in the second district near the ship. Yeah, we saw the Music Verein just back there. That's the most important concert hall in the city, being the home of the Vienna Philharmonic. But ahead of us to the right is the second most important concert hall in Vienna. This is the Konzerthaus. This is the home of the Vienna Symphonic Orchestra. So this is the second most important concert hall. On the right, on the corner ahead of us is the Academy Theatre, one of the theatres. But just along from there, you'll see the Konzerthaus on the right-hand side now, coming up. This is the second most important concert hall in the city. Followed by the ice skating rink from the 19th century on the right-hand side. It's a historic ice skating rink. And on the left-hand side, a little hidden away on the left-hand side, you might catch a glimpse of the statue of Beethoven, Ludwig van Beethoven. There he is, hidden away a little bit there. Beethoven, Mozart was in Vienna 10 years. Beethoven lived 35 years in Vienna. Every piece of music, nearly every piece of music you ever heard from Beethoven was written or premiered in or near Vienna. So it's a very important city for Beethoven, of course. On the left is then the back of the Stadtpark, this biggest park on the ring. We would have seen that from the other side. This is the other side to the Stadtpark. And coming up on the right, you'll see a building with a red and white flag, the red and white Austrian flag, which denotes it's an important historical building. Here on the right-hand side was once the Imperial Mint. Today that's the Mint, where they mint the euro coins. You might know the notes, of course, the euro notes are always the same wherever you are in Europe, but the coins are each minted by each country. So one side of the coin is always has a different pattern than the other coins, and that's where they mint the Austrian coins. Here on the right hand side then is the Raiffeisen Bank International. The biggest part of the Austrian industry actually is banking, and that's the biggest bank, Raiffeisen Bank International. The second most important part of the Austrian economy is insurance. The biggest insurance company is Unica. Who owns Unica? Raiffeisen Bank International. So the Raiffeisen Bank is one of these companies, one of these banks. Every country has them, which are very, what do you call it, essential for the economy. That it goes well for them.
Coins that are minted here,
Mm-hmm.
you can use them in other countries, right?
Yeah, the euro notes and the euro coins are valid in the eurozone. Yeah, so I think it's 17 countries.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're all over the same. You can use them, but the coins have an individual. One side of it is individual. Like on the 2 euro coin, 1 euro coin is the Mozart, for instance, in Austria. But they're valid everywhere.
Okay.
People collect them. Because it's quite interesting to try and get all the coins from all the different countries. They're different. Coming up on the right now is a building the local people called, they nicknamed this the Aquarium. A couple of years ago this was voted one of the ugliest buildings in Vienna. A little bit unfair, I think. It's a ministry, a government ministry, isn't it? But it's not Schönbrunn, that's for
It
sure.
does look like an
No
aquarium.
shot. Yes, sir.
It does look like it. It does look like
It's the first Tesla car I've seen.
To the left, the Urania. You would have seen that this morning, the first public observatory in Austria. On the left hand side. And now we're back at the canal.
Let's try
It's Nihad, is this? Nihad? Panorama. That's Panorama.
Nihad.
Nihad. Nihad.
some water into the canal. It looks like it's moving
Yeah,
fast.
current on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite rough today, that's true. There's quite a lot of current, quite rough, the Danube Canal today. Yes, when we cross over the Danube Canal, we're in the second district, then where your ship is moored, so we're quite near the ship now. Actually means that the second district is an island, together with the 20th district to the north. It's actually surrounded by water. You've got the Danube Canal here, of course the Danube Canal runs into the Danube, so although it doesn't feel like it, we're surrounded by the water.
Is that what that blue line that said zone means? On the road? It said zone. You're in the different...
No, that's something else. I don't think that's that. I don't think so. I didn't see that, but I think that must be to do with the lorries, deliveries, I think.
swing things. Oh, that looks like part of the Ferris wheel sitting on there, isn't it? This one right here, this red thing, number 5.
One of the old cabins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're quite near to the ship. I just wanted to finish actually with a short anecdote connected with Schoenbrunn. It was actually about a US pop star. A US pop star who I can't name for various reasons, unfortunately, but he was one of the most successful of the US pop stars. He was certainly one of the most wealthy. You could actually call him a global pop star, but he was from the US, so I'll say he was a US pop star. He was quite often in Vienna. He would always hold every period of time a European tour. And whenever this US pop star was on tour in Europe, he always held a concert in Vienna. It was always at the Prater Stadium, which is to the right of us. That's the big international football stadium, which always holds the big pop and rock concerts. 72,000 people, always sold out. Now, when this US pop star came to Vienna, he always stayed at the Hotel Imperial on the Ring, and he wrote actually one of his famous songs when he was staying there once. Anyway, one of his visits to Vienna, he let it be known he'd like to see Schoenbrunn. He'd like to do a tour of Schoenbrunn. Now, what happens when the palace has someone who's really famous or really important wants to see the palace? They give him a tour in the evening, when it's closed. And so this US pop star was given a tour of Schoenbrunn. He would have seen the same rooms as you saw today, and it was a really unusual tour. Because throughout the tour he seemed really fascinated by everything. He looked at everything, listened to all the stories, but he never said a word. He never asked a question, he never made a comment, but he seemed really fascinated by everything he saw right the way through to the end. But right the way through to the end, not even at the end, he never said a single word. The next day, the management of Schoenbrunn, they got a phone call from this US pop star's manager. He'd like to know if the palace is for sale.
Elvis Presley.
Is it Michael Jackson?
It wasn't Elvis Presley.
Michael Jackson.
It wasn't Elvis Presley. I can't say who it was, but if you want to guess who it was, you have to imagine. Ask 2 questions. You have to think now which US pop star was really so rich, so really rich, that they could even think they could afford to buy somewhere like Schoenbrunn. That's the first question, and the second question would be which US pop star would maybe want to buy palace.
Michael Jackson.
It wasn't Prince.
You're not going to tell us?
I can't tell you, I'm sorry. I can't tell you because, no, I'm afraid I can't, because you have to imagine someone has been said information which is private. From Schoenbrunn. You know what I mean? I can't say it. But I think you can guess. It wasn't Elvis Presley, because Elvis Presley, I was told, never held a concert abroad outside of the US.
We're going to go back and said our tour guide said Michael Jackson.
I lose my job. No, I wouldn't lose my job, but I think you can guess. Yes, I think there's only a few people who come into consideration.
Well, that's it. You can't
Liberace.
Was Liberace so rich?
No.
He was pretty wealthy, wasn't he? But I don't know. Not on that scale.
Not that real.
And Liberace would not have been able to keep his mouth shut. Sorry, wrong guy.
Okay. I'll leave you to guess that. You're getting pretty warm. Anyway, I'd like to thank our driver Nihad. Yeah, for doing a great job. Thank you. Getting us around the city. We're back on time. Yes, we called up some time, so we're back on time, which is great. I hope you enjoyed your trip out to Schoenbrunn. You saw a lot today. You saw Schoenbrunn, you saw the Old Town, St. Stephen's, the Ring. 2 very important parts of the history of Vienna. Of course, Vienna is more than its history, but if you understand a little bit about its history, you can understand the city better. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the afternoon. Have a nice evening. Whatever you do this evening, maybe you're going to a concert or something, but whatever you do, enjoy yourselves. And Mozart concert, yes. Okay. Yes, that's also a very important part of the city, the music, yeah. So whatever you do, enjoy the evening, and maybe see you again one day. So I'll say Auf Wiedersehen, which I'm sure you know means see you again, and Dankeschön. So thank you very much, and have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Oh, lady, what are you doing with your kid like that?
Thanks for going over and above, looking for somebody.
Yeah.
Who needs a Ferris wheel?
stop at the beginning of the ramp.
It does say bus.
Vidar.
There we are. Bus.
Right there, Vidar.
Good.
Right there, Vidar.
There we go.
Right here.
Back up.
Perfecto.
Super.
That's us.
Good job. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Jeez, my seat up again.
Do that again.
I'm gonna hurt myself.